Hello and welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you for joining us For Your Health, a program that, that's very descriptive. It's naturally a program that aims at keeping you healthy. Today, as in programs past, joining me from the Quincy Health Department is a public health nurse coordinator. That would be Caitlin Pico. So Caitlin, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Always happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And we always mention that this program does play beyond the state. It actually goes out nationwide. And quite a few folks, many folks actually, do find what you have to say important and do enjoy your delivery style. So congratulations on that.
Yes, it's definitely expanded. It's always great to come and provide some information on different health topics. And as I always like to say, I do collect this information mostly from the CDC and the Massachusetts State Health Department. I do have a couple of the resources that I will be utilizing today that I'll cover at the end. But for the most part, it's all very widely the information is very across the board for all different states. If I do go into specific regulations ever, I always just say reach out to your local Board of Health.
Very good. Today's topic is dehydration. And as always, we will begin with an outline. So I always say this so you know what to expect, but I also know what to expect from my guest. So looking at dehydration, we will start with a definition. We will talk about the benefits of drinking water, signs and symptoms of dehydration, common causes of dehydration, complications, tips to increase water intake, and where to find additional information. So a lot to cover, a very important topic. I'm going to start by saying most folks don't drink enough water. Am I correct?
Yes, across the board, it's on a day-to-day basis, people really are not intaking a lot. And a lot of beverages at the market and at grocery stores, there's so much out there right now that it's hard to know what to choose and what to drink to stay hydrated. Especially with all the electrolyte drinks and all of that. So I just was hoping to cover this because it's funny, so many people just live life dehydrated and they blame all these symptoms on different things. Where drinking water every day, it would just really help your overall well-being.
And we say water, but of course just liquid in general. It doesn't have to be water, but we will go through what's probably most beneficial for us to intake?
Yes.
All right, so definition, what is dehydration?
Yeah, so dehydration, it seems obviously very common. So it's a condition that occurs when the body loses too much water and other fluids that it needs to work normally. Because the human body is made up of at least 60% water, and it plays a vital role in all of the day-to-day functions. So when somebody is dehydrated, it can make you very sick. And it's important to know that dehydration can be severe, especially for young children and for older adults, because you want to think of it with the younger children and infants. Due to the higher proportion of fluids to their surface area because they're so small, they will quickly lose fluids. And they also, you got to think of it, they can't ask for a drink. They don't get a drink themselves, so it's tough to tell. So we will cover some signs and symptoms to look out for those young infants. And then even for older adults, as we age, the body's fluid reserve decreases, and the thirst, that feeling you get when you're thirsty, that becomes less acute as you age as well. So aging and accompanied by different health conditions you may have, that could put them at a higher risk for experiencing dehydration. So definitely those two groups will cover signs and symptoms that would really affect them.
And a good point, because what you just said just struck me, that you may need fluid, but not sense that you need fluid,
Yes.
especially in older adults.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't get thirsty until you're already dehydrated. So sometimes at that point it's tough to get your body to where it needs to be. So we'll go over the tips, but I always say keep a water with you and just drink it throughout the day. It's very important.
With that said, let's
Yeah.
look at the benefits of drinking water.
Yeah, so the benefits. So what water does and fluids, they help regulate your body temperature. It also provides lubrication or cushion to your joints and your spinal cord and other sensitive tissues within your body. And it also is important to help remove waste through your body. So that waste is removed through urination, through sweating, and also through bowel movements. If you're dehydrated, your body it doesn't function normally. You would be urinating less frequently. So you got to think those toxins that the water is helping your body remove, if you're not drinking enough fluids, you're not excreting all those toxins.
And we may get into this, but I know that with urine, be aware of the color of your urine, because the darker it is, that's an indication that you're not getting enough fluid.
Yeah, so definitely that's a really good sign, the dark urine. It is important to know that there are certain medications that you may be on that can also affect your urine color. For example, rifampin, which is a medication that's typically used for tuberculosis treatment. They're little red pills, and we always tell people, just so you know, your urine might be red. So you also want to take that into account too. But if you do notice your urine's really dark, keep an eye on it and check in with the doctor. My favorite thing to say, always make sure your doctor is aware.
Absolutely. Let's look at signs and symptoms of dehydration.
Yeah, so we had mentioned the first sign, which is thirst. So as I had said, this typically starts when the person is already dehydrated. Therefore, you want to increase your water intake before you even get thirsty. Other symptoms you may experience are dry mouth, headache, fatigue, that dark colored urine, a decrease in urinating, so you're urinating less frequently. You may have sunken eyes or cheeks, dry or cool skin, constipation, dizziness or fainting, muscle cramps. We have rapid heartbeat, otherwise known as tachycardia, or rapid breathing, which is tachypnea. And also you may, especially for older adults, you may see some confusion, so some mental status changes. And then for the younger children, especially those infants, you might also notice they might have a dry mouth or tongue. They may have no tears when they're crying. If they had no wet diapers for more than 3 hours. And they might have like a sunken soft spot on the top of their skull, especially if they're newborns and they have less hair, you can see that on their skull. And infants may also be very irritable. So any of those symptoms, especially for an infant, the parents probably already checking in with that doctor just to overall make sure they're okay. But if you or a loved one are experiencing any of these symptoms, if it's been ongoing, definitely check in with your doctor, because they may require you get IV fluids instead of just oral taking in water.
And what is the benchmark for, let's say, an adult? How many bottles of water, or what kind of fluid intake is basically the norm?
So I actually have that when coming up.
I'm jumping ahead.
Just skipping ahead a little bit. But the goal is to drink about a half an ounce to 1 ounce of water per pound of your body weight. So that's a lot of water throughout the day. The best thing to do is to kind of calculate that in your own mind. And like, I always like to think of it in liters. So like if I have to drink 2 liters a day, and that way you get a good cup that you like, and you can kind of just keep refilling it and keep it on you throughout the day. You're not always going to reach your goal, of course, but if you start out each day with that in mind, I think it could really help your overall hydration.
I like that. I like the fact that you're basically saying carry this cup or this water bottle around with you, so it's always there. Take a sip. We're not saying consume all 8 ounces at once.
Yes, yes. And there's a lot of things that go into it too, especially if you think of older adults. They may have health conditions where it's difficult for them to ambulate or walk to the bathroom. So they might not be drinking as much because they don't want to keep running back and forth. So there's a lot of different factors that can, that is an individual's reason for not drinking enough water. So good to keep all these symptoms in mind and know what to look out for.
And clearly that list of symptoms, you could tell where I suppose a person might be at the beginning of dehydration and when it becomes more severe as well. I mean, I think the symptoms, certainly rapid heartbeat and rapid breathing would be critical. So that would be probably almost a later stage of dehydration.
Yes, yes. And at that point you want to go, probably if that's never happened to you, the tachycardia, it can be frightening. And at that point, you really do want to have someone take you to a doctor to check in. At least give them a phone call to let them know what's going on.
And we should mention, too, you and I are both outdoors people, that if you're exerting yourself, you're out taking a hike, you're going to require more water than if you're just, or more fluid, than if you're just standing still, sitting on a porch at your house, let's say.
Yes. My fiance always tells me his first hike he went on, he brought one water bottle for a 5-mile hike, and to this day, he's like, I will never do that again. Because you really are exerting your body, you're using so much energy, and you're sweating, so you're losing fluids that way. So definitely when outdoors, make sure you pack those waters. Even I see, like, sometimes different companies out there have certain things, like I think it's the one I'm thinking of is the Life Straw. Like, have you ever seen that in hiking gear? So basically, it's so you can drink from like a fresh stream. So like if you are an avid hiker and you go out for a week or days at a time, something like that might be good to have in your backpack in case you run out of water or run into trouble. That way you do have a source of water if you do come across it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, common causes of dehydration.
So the most common cause that we see is from severe diarrhea or vomiting. And especially if this is acute, so if this is a sudden onset, you can lose tremendous amounts of fluid. And with this loss of water, you're also getting an electrolyte imbalance. And you got to think those electrolytes in your body are used for your body to communicate all the electrical, like the sodium and potassium are very necessary for your body, your brain to tell your muscles what to do and all of that. So it can be very dangerous. And then also another cause is, of course, by not drinking enough fluids. We also have that increase in sweating. Individuals that have a fever, maybe losing more fluids rapidly. Even with that, you want to think like if somebody's sweating profusely with a fever. Increased urinating. And then which you can see with different medical conditions. Like, for example, if you were a diabetic, you might urinate more frequently depending on how well your insulin is managed or blood sugar levels. So you want to keep an eye on that. And then also certain medications that you take, so laxatives, diuretics, and some blood pressure medicine. These have a diuretic effect that make you increase urinating, so you're losing fluids. And one thing I always like to add too is caffeine. Caffeine also has a diuretic property to it. So I will have people tell me they're dehydrated. And they're like, well, I drink a large coffee in the morning and I have one water bottle. And I'm like, well, the coffee is not helping you by sipping on it all day. I love my coffee and I won't give it up, but I always make sure to drink at least as much water after I finish my coffee.
Very good.
And
Well,
definitely,
that's because you're a public health nurse.
oh, I try my best. I'm never perfect with any of these measures, but I always try to. But there's too many health conditions and medications to even mention right now that could affect your hydration levels. So check in with your doctor or a pharmacist even, that when you're picking up your medicine, they'll be able to let you know if anything you're on or taking is going to make you more prone to dehydration.
You mentioned electrolytes. Let's talk about electrolytes. They're not available in water, correct?
Pretty much, like some waters do have it added. For example, like a Smart Water or a Propel Water, they do add electrolytes. Your average spring water won't have it added. That's important too. When it's so tough, because on the market right now there's so many different brands of electrolytes, either packets or actual bottles that you get right out of the fridge. Definitely keep an eye on the sugar levels in them as well. And also keep in mind, if you have high blood pressure and you're drinking an electrolyte packet every day, that's very high in sodium. So you want to make sure you're not just adding it on a whim. Make sure it works for yourself and with your medical conditions and all of that.
Right. So I guess what I'm thinking is, the benefits of electrolytes as opposed to just plain spring water.
Yeah, so the benefits are, so it helps with your overall hydration, and the electrolytes help absorb the fluid in your body. Like sometimes if you have not enough electrolytes, you won't retain the water that you're drinking. But it's just important to know, just make sure, one big thing we've always been told, like some of the sports drinks that are out there.
Like Gatorade.
Like Gatorade, for example. People think that you drink that every day. And if you're drinking several of those a day, there's a lot of sugar in them as well. So Gatorade would be more, and I do drink Gatorade. I love Gatorade. But something like that, you would want to think of more athletes, which you do think of, because they are exerting so much energy during sports and all of that. So they need to replenish. Whereas the average, like if I left here and drink one, it's not going to help me as much as them. So it's more when you're sick or
and that also brings
exerting a lot
me
of energy.
right, and that brings me to Pedialyte.
Yeah, so Pedialyte's another great brand. They have a lot of, I always say they have less sugar than the other sports drinks out there. So Pedialyte's definitely good. You think of that, especially like for sick children.
Exactly.
They come in lollipop form, they come in popsicle form.
That
so
just sounds so good.
Yeah.
Even to
yeah,
me.
I know. So it's good to have.
I got sidetracked there, but I needed to get that question answered, because that was one of my questions about electrolytes versus liquid that doesn't have that in it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about complications.
So complications. So I already had mentioned how dehydration can be very severe for infants and for elderly. So some complications that can happen, you could have heat injury. So this is dehydration in hot weather. And it can vary in the severity from cramps to all the way to heat exhaustion, which can be life-threatening, and it can lead to heat stroke. So in a situation like that, definitely call 911. You may also lead to urinary or kidney problems if it's ongoing or repeated dehydration. The individual can get urinary tract infections, kidney stones, or even kidney failure. We also may see seizures. So this is kind of where the electrolytes come into play. When an individual is dehydrated, they would have that electrolyte imbalance. So especially that potassium and sodium, with the imbalance, it can lead to involuntary muscle contractions, loss of consciousness, and seizures. Because as I had mentioned, those electrolytes help your body's electrical signals in the cells to help your body communicate throughout in order to operate. And then another complication we would have is a hypovolemic shock, which is otherwise just known as low blood volume. And this is also life-threatening, and it occurs when the low blood volume leads to a drop in blood pressure, and you also would have less oxygen circulating in your body. So that is also can be life-threatening. So and in a situation like that, you would want to go see a doctor right away or call 911.
Now, tips to increase water intake. And I do want to say that, folks will say, although there are quite a few options out there now than there used to be, I just don't like the taste of water. So therefore, I don't drink. That's, of course, dangerous. But think about that, and in relation to that, the variety of other drinks that you have out there, and the ability to possibly even flavor your own water.
Yes, yeah. So there's so much on the market today. There's drink packets you can add to water bottles. There's like little drips that you just drip into it as well. My biggest thing with those, just make sure you know what you're buying. A lot of those, if they are low calorie, they might have like aspartame in it. So like you just want to make sure you know what you're drinking. So I always try to, water is the best for on a daily, you want to make sure you are having some water because you think of it, it's the healthiest thing for you. There is no sodium, there is no sugar. So like it's not going to harm anybody. So as I said, set that goal for yourself. And again, that was 1/2 ounce to about 1 ounce of water per pound of your weight. You want to choose plain water over those sugary drinks. If you are sick and you're experiencing dehydration, your doctor may suggest you use some of those electrolyte drinks. And then again, carry those water bottles with you, refill it throughout the day. I had mentioned popsicles for children. I know when I was little and
Popsicles for adults.
And for adults, yes. When I was younger, I used to get very sick and I'd have fevers and I would just sleep. And my mom would be like, you need to drink water. Like, please drink something. But popsicles was always the thing she could get me to have.
That won you over.
Yeah. And then also, like, hydration can also come from food items. So your diet, you can incorporate foods to increase your hydration, including cucumbers, iceberg lettuce, celery, tomatoes, strawberries, watermelon's a great choice. So definitely just educate yourself, know what you're putting in your own body, and do your best to make healthy decisions when you're purchasing either your drinks, your electrolyte packets, if it's that. Just know what you're ingesting. It's very important.
You know what I heard the other day? Just cut up a strawberry and put it in your water glass.
Yeah, so there are some cups on the market that they'll infuse fruit into your water, but that's also a very good thing if you don't like plain water, but you like blueberries and strawberries. Cut them up and add it to it for the flavor.
I've got some blueberries in my yard, but I have to battle the birds to get them. The other thing I'm thinking about too is that you see a lot of seltzer water out there. Almost every other day another brand pops up, and if you look at the ingredients, it's 000, so you're pretty safe, I would believe, with seltzer water. But it does have a kick to it that regular water doesn't.
Yes, yes. And it definitely, like, you can kind of taste the difference with the bubbles, like, of course, the carbonation. But that's a good choice, too, because it does provide hydration. So just, that's a good choice if you'd rather that. I have a lot of girlfriends that switched from drinking soda to drinking soda water, and it just overall, they're ingesting less sugar, they're hydrating while they drink it. So it's it's a good choice to pick.
To be a friend of yours must be very beneficial. A lot of health tips, I'm sure. Next, let's look at where to find additional information.
Yeah, so this is kind of just where I got my resources too. So on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC website, it's cdc.gov. If you look up healthy weight, water and healthier, it was like the link it brought me to. So you can get some information on that CDC website. Also UCLAhealth.org, and then the Mayo Clinic as well had plenty of information on how to stay hydrated and stay healthy.
Very good. On that note, I think we've come to the end of the program. Lots of great information. As always, Caitlin, do appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
We'll have you back on a different day with a different topic.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. And thank you at home for watching. Please continue to support the local access television station in the city or town in which you reside. Take care.